Okay, hi everyone. Again, this is Kim Seymour. I appreciate you joining us today. We have some time set aside to ensure that you, the emerging leaders, and some of the sponsors here who are unable to make it to the March conference have the same information about the Capstone experience as the rest of your peers. So just to be clear, this is not intended to replicate what we covered at March, at the March conference. The conferences aren't really things that can be made up necessarily, but again, want to just make sure that at least for the capstone period and presentation, you have a clear understanding of what the expectations are for you to have a successful experience in completing your emerging leader program. So just to kind of give a little bit of a background here so you have an idea of how this came up at the March conference, we did an activity to start us off to reintegrate ourselves with what was covered in all of the conferences in 2016. So we divided up into 7 groups, and each group took one of the 7 key modules that we covered in 2016 in your program, and did a teach back mechanism to get everybody reacquainted with the material and also have some dialogue about how each of the modules really built upon itself. And the idea with that is that you have an idea for yourselves as individuals of what the flow of the program has been for your learning, and then be able to put some logic behind how you're going to be applying what you've learned in the capstone period. So the module that we used for that is called Your Journey. That can be located on the SharePoint site. So I encourage you to go out and review those to give you an idea of what was covered. And begin using the program guide, which has an experiential learning key takeaways sheet that you can use as a template to start mapping out how you want to demonstrate what you've applied in the program in your capstone. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, and certainly feel free to work with a peer who was at the March conference for clarification on anything that you may not understand. Okay, so does anyone know what a capstone is? Has anyone done a capstone maybe in their coursework at school? It's sometimes thought of almost like a thesis. It's your final product, presentation, or performance that is a culmination of everything that you've learned, typically in an academic program or learning pathway experience. So for the Emerging Leader Program, what we're looking for in this is that you really approach it from a couple of different angles. So one is that experiential learning, where you take what you learn and you go support a role in the OCC, something that's a stretch assignment, or you go and you support a diesel outage window, or some sort of a capital project or summer readiness, something that is a stretch assignment for you in an experiential learning where you can practice your communication skills, practice being a leader, your presentation skills, all those things that we've talked about, assessing a group in a root cause and figuring out, how can I work best with these individuals and motivate them to produce a product or come out to the other side of this situation that we're in with a positive result. So really applying everything that you've learned in those experiences, and in your program guide, you'll see that we have some suggestions, but that is certainly not an exhaustive list. But we're recommending that you look for 5 to 10 of those experiences that make sense for your development. So reflecting on your development goals and working with your manager and your sponsor to identify things that really make sense for you in the career goals that you have set out. So that's the biggie in terms of what a capstone is. And then if you think about some of the other things that we have talked about, Mentoring is another great opportunity. That is in itself an experience where you can apply what you've learned. So at this point, for those who are class of 2017, as hopefully you all are, you have been assigned to mentor someone who is in the new class of emerging leaders, where you'll actually be giving them advice about how to successfully get through the program and get the most out of it. How did you succeed, or where do you wish you had extra help or insights, answering any questions that they might have, helping them tie their own conference learnings into their development. You'll also participate in their 360 assessment, which is another component of your capstone experience, and help them identify some of those experiential learning opportunities. So, in the next conference, we will be talking about this mentoring module in more detail to help you be set up to successfully mentor your program mentee. But wanted to highlight that is really part of the capstone experience, where you get to practice those leadership skills. And then the other component is that 360 assessment. So has anyone on the call had a 360 before? And I'll open that up to the sponsors as well.
Yeah, this is Mohammed Elker. I've had it, but not here at Exelon, at a previous company I worked for.
What'd you think?
No, it was great. You get feedback from people that you work with. So I actually had 9 individuals that I managed, and then I got feedback from them, and then I got feedback from my peers and from my manager. So it was a lot of good feedback.
It is. That's exactly what it is. Thank you for sharing that. It's a lot of good feedback. So a 360 assessment is set up so that you, as emerging leaders, will identify people that you want to have give you feedback. They're called raters. And those should be people that are 360 degrees around you. So what does that mean? It could be, if you have direct reports, it would be direct reports. If it's it should be your mentee in the program, or other mentees maybe that you have in the organization, peers, your manager, whoever you would consider to be your customer, your senior level leaders, your sponsor, people who get to see you in action. And this is an opportunity for them to provide feedback in a way that comes back to you as basically a summary of how you are perceived in the organization. And this is what I would view almost as the final assessment in the Emerging Leader Program, to provide you with some sense of, you've worked hard, you've been applying what you've learning, you've been evolving as leaders. Where do others see you in your progression to leadership? What additional tweaks do you need to make, or what things can you continue doing that will help you be successful? And so your experience with the 360 assessment and also mentoring are things that we're going to talk more about at the May conference. So I don't want to get into too much more detail about that, but they are critical pieces to the experiential learning that you'll go through is the mentoring and the feedback. And then who knows what the final piece of the capstone is? Oh, you guys are killing me. Presentation. The end of it, you're going to give a presentation. The reason for the presentation is that the senior leaders want to hear, what is it that you learned in the program? Why did they invest the time and the money to send you through this 24-month or 18-month program? And how are they getting a return on investment from having made the investment in you? So the things that you've learned, how have you applied that to make your mentee a better emerging leader, to be a better performer in your job, to contribute to projects and initiatives around the site? those are things that our senior leaders really want to hear about. And the capstone presentation is not something that would be exclusive to an audience of your site senior leadership team, but more of a cross-section environment where you have senior executives from corporate or other sites who can come, that you can showcase what you've done, what you've learned, and what you've accomplished through the program and through your capstone experience. So a little bit more detail here. As I mentioned, it is the return on investment that you're going to be communicating. And then ultimately, the audience should walk away understanding why it was a good decision to invest in your development and what that did for the business, how you've applied that learning and development, and how they're helping you not just in your current place of your career, but also your future roles, and how you're getting ready for those next roles. And then also, again, just reinforcing why you were the right person to be selected in the program and that it was a good investment. So from a guidelines perspective, we're thinking this is something that's going to be about 3 to 5 minutes. Again, with that senior executive audience. So you as emerging leaders are going to be responsible for getting this scheduled. Encourage you to work with your peers at the sites, and empower, this again would look a little bit different, but sponsors are there to help you and help get that coordinated, not doing it for you, but maybe give you some idea of when you have these big meetings coming up, such as nuclear safety review boards, management review meetings, senior leadership team meetings, etc. And then in terms of time frame, what makes sense to the emerging leader working team is to target sometime in October or November. And the reason for that is that it gives you a little bit of run time from your last conference here in May, to practice being a mentor, get some actual application in for that experience, to go through your 360 assessment and get some of that feedback, and also complete some of the experiential activities so that you actually have something real meaty to talk about and share. One thing I do want to just point out also is, TMOD, Talent Management Organizational Development Specialists out at your sites and for Power will be helping get your 360 scheduled. But we're going to hold it hostage until you've scheduled your capstone presentation. So you'll complete your 360 assessment, we'll get the feedback report, and then we'll talk about this more in May, in a couple weeks at the conference, but there's a spreadsheet out on the Emerging Leader SharePoint site where you will, once you have your capstone presentation scheduled with a date and a venue, you'll log in that spreadsheet the commitment you've made to give the presentation on a specific date, and whether it's at an NSRB or an MRM, SLT, or otherwise. And until you get that scheduled, we won't be giving you your debrief. So it's some motivation to start looking ahead and figuring out where on the calendar you want to get that landed. I'll just note too that certain emerging leaders, based on their performance, based on how great of a return on investment with their presentation they're able to articulate, may be selected to give their capstone presentation more than once. What do I mean by that? So you have the requirement to give at least the one presentation, 3 to 5 minutes, as the slide demonstrates, but you may also be selected to give the presentation to a larger executive audience at like a CNO meeting or the Exelon Power Senior Executive Staff meeting or other venue. So keep that in mind. It would be amazing visibility for those who are selected, a great chance again to showcase, brag a little bit. So looking forward to seeing what everyone brings to the table, and ultimately selecting somebody that will be able to showcase the program well. One recommendation I would make is that as you get your dates lined up, make sure you add in some time to do some dry runs, seek out feedback from your sponsor and your peers before giving a formal presentation, of course. And I'm sure you guys would all do that anyhow because we talked about that in the presentation skills module about 2 conferences ago. So with that, I do not have anything else for the group, but just wanted to use the last 10 minutes or so that we have to answer any questions that you all may have, emerging leaders or sponsors, about the Capstone period, whether it be the experiences, the mentoring, the 360, or the final presentation.
Everything seems pretty clear from my end. No questions from me.
Okay. Anyone else?
So for the presentation, just to verify, so it could be site SLT or an MRM, NSRB. It doesn't have to be like the actual senior leadership for nuclear or anything like that. Am I correct in that?
Yes. And to be clear, so again, we're looking for you to get an audience where you have a couple of people outside of your site senior leadership team. So we're not telling you who it needs to be or what level, just that you ensure you're giving yourselves the opportunity to get visibility with other executives. Other questions from the group? Katie or Kelly, anything that I missed you want to highlight or reinforce?
No, I don't think so. The only thing I heard you say, Kim, and for the emerging leaders on the call, is about the 360s. Is everybody pretty clear about how that process is going to work to initiate the 360 and kind of what the steps are to make sure that you get that process initiated?
This is Katie. They'll get that in the conference coming up next month.
Got it.
Okay. Anything else? Final call for comments or questions before we say end of call? Okay, great. Well, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to your sponsor or your talent management specialist, and we will look forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks at your final conference in May. Thanks so much, everyone. End of call.
Thank you.